rates. So putting all that in context, inclusive leadership is fairness and respect, value and belonging, confidence and inspiration. So fairness and respect is basically treating people as individual, accepting their uniqueness and actually embracing it and valuing it based on who they are, based on their uniqueness and not on the stereotypes that we have in our head. It's about equality of treat and equity in resources and equality in treatment as well as equity of opportunities. Value and belong, when we value the differences and accept them, not tolerating them, then people feel valued and appreciated, and it nurtures a sense of community, of social connectedness and belonging. And confidence and inspiration, because when we leverage the total thinking, remember the sum of all is better than one. We have better ideation, we have better decision making, we have better problem solving, better innovation, better creativity, and we create this safe environment for people to flourish, where they have the confidence to speak up and be themselves and feel they belong, and this way they are motivated to do their best work. To achieve the goals, the inclusive leaders need to have special capabilities, like we talked in the beginning, which are 6 traits or characteristics. And these traits or signature traits are reflected in the correlation, the way they think and what they do. So I call them the 6 C's. And again, it's based on the Deloitte inclusion survey that has been done. It's commitment, courage, cognizance of bias, curiosity, cultural intelligence, and collaboration. We're going to go through that in details. So these are the 6 C's. Curiosity is because differences enable growth. Cultural intelligence is because not everyone sees the world through the same cultural frame or through the same lens. Collaboration, because diverse thinking team is greater than the sum of its part. Commitment, because staying the course will be hard. Courage, because talking about imperfection, our own imperfections, involves vulnerability and personal risk-taking. And cognizance of bias, because bias is the Achilles heel of a leader. So let's go into detail. Commitment. So obviously, inclusive leaders are committed to diversity and inclusion. So what they practice is that they align their personal values of diversity, inclusion, respect, valuing individuality and differences, and practices to meet the needs of others actually becomes aligned of their personal values, and they align that with the values of the organization they work for. And because the business case belief of diversity and inclusion is actually growing, and they take responsibility for its outcomes, they allocate resources, and they articulate it in a very authentic way. That's commitment. Courage. Courage, because we have, like we said, it takes courage to stay on the course. Basically, they speak up and they challenge the status quo by being humble. Humble is being self-aware of my weaknesses, is being self-aware of my strength, is acknowledging my personal limitations, it gathering a team that has the different skills that I might not have, and being okay with it, not being threatened. And it's about admitting mistake that I might do. That's humility, being vulnerable. And believe it or not, the more vulnerable we are, the more self-confident we are. The second thing of courage is bravery. And I want to remind you, courage is not acting fearless, is acting despite of fear. Bravery is to be brave, to be an agent of change. An inclusive leader will do things that might not be popular, but it might be the right thing to do. So they challenge what we call the second generation bias that is embedded into an organization guidelines and maybe principles, and the way they look at promotions and the way they look at salary increase and even development and coaching and mentoring. Looking at all these things, and removing the second generation bias that can stop people like from minorities, like women, like people of color, from advancing or having a glass ceiling. They stop homogeneity and hold others accountable for their non-inclusive behavior. That's two, courage. And then cognizance, I think someone needs to mute themselves. Okay. Cognizance of bias. They are mindful of their own personal blind spot, or that knee jerk when they have it. They are aware of their bias that can narrow the field of vision and prevent making objective decisions. And the first thing I always say, and I'm sure most of you know it, is to go online, and it's not perfect, but it can give you an idea. It's the Harvard Implicit Bias Test. It's online and it's free, and it can give you a start on where to go. So the most important part is in recognizing that we have bias and be open-minded that we have it, that we are not perfect, is self-regulation, is accepting it, like knowing that when I realize that I have bias, I will slow down my decision making, and I can take corrective strategies that is not going to influence my decision because of my bias. And it's about also fair play. It's avoiding self-cloning and self-interest, and having transparency and make sure that people are buying in the decision, even if whatever they suggested is not going to work, by explaining to them and by being transparent about this. These are examples of bias. Implicit stereotypes, where we judge others based on characteristics that we have in our mind and we put them all in a box. Similarity attraction, where we connect with people like ourselves. Attribution error, where we use the wrong logic or the wrong reason to explain someone's behavior, because we always find a way out for them. Specifically when we favorite our in-groups, but it also has a negative effect on the out-groups with people that don't look or think like us. In-group favoritism, because we favor the people that are like us and we neglect the others, because there is actually a scientific meaning behind it. When they did MRI on the brain, when we think about ourselves, the areas in our brain that highlighted in the MRI are the same areas that got highlighted when we thought about people that look like us, that think like us. So we didn't feel we were in danger. We didn't feel that there is something that we need to fight against, to go to our primal caveman fear of survival. But actually, when we thought about people that were not like us or the out groups, the areas change, and that's why we act differently towards people that are like us or not. Then there is confirmation bias, where people, and we see it a lot these days, people believe in something and they will go only for facts that basically prove what they are thinking, without having the open mind of looking at all the facts, all the surveys, all the research, and make up their own mind. And they are partial to existing beliefs. And the last one, which is very dangerous, is the group think, where the desire for group harmony actually overrides the rational decision making. Number 4 is curiosity, where inclusive leaders have an open mind and a real, genuine desire to see where people are. What are their views and experiences? And here we're going to say tolerance for ambiguity or uncertainty, because we allow it to a certain degree. So the first one is on curiosity, is being open about, like I said, own limitation, value different ideas, continuous learning, because we will never stop learning in our life. Withhold fast judgments and seek ideas from people that might be different or diverse than what we are. Perspective taking, meaning that we can start having, because of the open mind, embracing different perspectives. And this happens only, actually, it's part of emotional intelligence, by active listening. And sometimes ask respectful and curious questions to demonstrate the ability that we can see things from a different point of view. Coping or tolerating uncertainty and ambiguity, because change has a lot of uncertainty. So we need to have the curiosity and the courage to go through it, encourage different way of thinking, so we can seek opportunities where we can connect with different people. Number 5, and this is very important, is the CQ, or the cultural intelligence. So it's about understanding diverse cultures and the many layers, like intersectionality, like we talked about it in the beginning. It's about increasing respect, morale, and the promotion of inclusive and safe environment. The model of cultural intelligence has 4 elements that we're going to talk about right now. The first one is motivational, where as inclusive leader, we have an energy and we have an interest and a motivation towards learning cross-cultural interactions and engaging in them. The second one is cognitive, where we on a cognitive level of our brain, we start to learn and have a knowledge of different cultural norms, practices, and convention. That doesn't mean that we need to know every single culture, but being aware that there are differences in cultures and it's okay to be respected and to try to get through it. Metacognitive, meaning that the leader level of conscious cultural awareness, where is it at that level of interaction? That's inside the brain. And then behavioral, or the use of appropriate verbal, nonverbal actions and ways of speaking in cross-cultural interactions. These are the 4 sides or the 4 corners of cultural intelligence. So how does it help us? It gives the drive where we see actually the benefits of learning different perspective, of being culturally diverse, in a confident in a different environment with cross-cultural teams that can add to each other rather than competing with each other, is having the knowledge not only of differences but of similarities between cultures as well, like learning what are the business economic knowledge, the norms and practices. So for example, millennials have a culture, Xers have a culture, different genders have a culture. So having that knowledge, I was just letting someone else, knowledge is also important. And the last thing of cultural intelligence is adaptability. Obviously, when we go into change management situation, we need to be flexible. We need to be adaptable. This is the only way we can succeed. And that's why a lot of change management actions fail, because they're not adaptable or flexible. So acceptance that there are different cultural situations, we're gonna have to manage through it, that the change style is that we are going through in cross-cultural environment will be different. So we need to use, and respect will be the base of all that. Appropriate behavior, like including the way we talk, our tone, like the speed of when we speak, when we use pause or silence. Like for example, the Asian culture is more of a listening culture than talking culture, versus here in the United States, when we have a pause or silence, we get very frantic. It's like, and we start putting things like, how is the weather? How was traffic? Because we don't feel comfortable in that silence. The nonverbal gesture also are important. The facial expression, the gesture that we do. Are we open or are we closed? Do we have crossed arms? Are we having a direct eye contact or not? How is our body language translating? And also the physical contact, even including the personal space that we have between every person. So the 6th or last part of the traits is collaboration. Collaboration is basically leveraging the thinking of the diverse groups. So the first thing it does is empowerment, where everybody feels they have a voice, they're comfortable, they are part of making the decision, where they can handle difficult situations, and they also hold the team members accountable for performance because they are engineers of that decision. They own it. You know, they become part of it, and it becomes, because they belong and they own it, they become all in their best interest to shine and to make everybody succeed. So success will be for everybody. The second thing in collaboration is teaming, is assembling team that might be different. So cross-culturally, cross-functionally, and make sure that there are no silos, that there are no out-groups in the team, where they respect each other and take appropriate, and they have basically ROE or rules of engagement on how to address team conflict when it occurs. And also in collaboration, voice, where we adapt the styles to make sure that every single one has a voice in a safe environment, where they feel comfortable that they can discuss and they can be included in the discussion, and there is actually follow-up questions on these projects. So what can leaders do? They can challenge their own bias. They can challenge the assumptions to reduce their confirmation bias where they look only for what they're looking for, to be curious and more open-minded about people, to have open mind to new and basically untested notions before, look at alternative. Also, the power and accountability has to be as a pyramid, yes, from up to down, but from down to up. And sharing power or delegating power doesn't equal abdicating or removing responsibility. Leaders should share awareness about diversity and inclusion and create safe environment for diverse team. As inclusive leaders, we need to make sure what is our impact on others. And we need to adapt to different styles, because if we are embracing diversity, there are different styles, like I said in the beginning, different learning styles, communication styles, and we have to adapt to that. Encourage different thoughts and divergent thoughts. Deconstruct silos and make sure that there are no in-groups and out-groups. And don't fear creative tension, because conflict, when managed properly and resolved, can be actually constructive. Align the personnel reward system based on the individuals that you have around you. Reach out for diverse candidates, even if they're not in your department. Mentor and sponsor diverse people, so this way you don't have the homogeneity. So what can organization do? These are systems that can make sure that there is organizational inclusion. Having strategic alignment where their DEI is in their DNA. It's a pillar that they put in their successes and they embedded in the behaviors that are needed to be in that organization. The recruiting has to be different. The recruiting has to go make sure that it's inclusive job ads where it's not the pronouns are just male, or they say we need a ninja, we need a warrior, you know, and go to other sources than the ones that we, or the pools that we always go to. In an interview, have panel of diverse people so you don't get into any kind of bias. Ask behavioral questions on inclusion, like for example, hello, like ask, for example, like how, if you were leading a group that had different ideas, how did you handle that? Performance management, or embed DEI in the KPIs that you have, where there is accountability for the non-inclusive behaviors. The rewards and recognition that you have should be an embodiment of leadership and their behaviors. In the leadership development, do identify gaps for development and make sure to integrate the 6 traits that we discussed, the 6 C's, in your leadership development. Encourage leaders to seek feedback, formal and informal, on their capabilities, like the 360 assessments of degrees that they have. And these are few of what we can do. These are the references that I use, and this is the end of my presentation for today. And by the way, this is only scratching the surface of inclusive leadership, because I know we are all busy and I didn't want to make it more longer than 1 hour.